Hello and welcome to Glasgow Doors Open Day's Digital Festival. This event will begin soon, but first we have a brief housekeeping message. So that you can get the most out of this session, we'd like to point out a few features of Zoom. By clicking on the buttons at the bottom of the Zoom window, you will be able to access the chat room, and if you are in a webinar, you will also be able to make use of the Q&A function. The Q&A function is so that you can ask specific questions of the speaker, which they will be able to answer time allowing at the end of the session. Use the chat room to contribute more generally to the discussion or to share links and resources. When using these features, please mind your P's and Q's. Both will be monitored and recorded. Most sessions will be recorded and uploaded to Glasgow Doors Open Days Festival YouTube channel and website. If you're in a meeting, please make sure you keep your microphone on mute unless otherwise directed by the host. If for some reason the session ends unexpectedly or you lose connection, please just click the link again and wait to be let back in. Similarly, if the host loses connection, please bear with us. We will do our best to manage any connection issues as and when they occur, and may contact you by email if necessary. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'd love to hear about your experience of our digital festival. Fill in our survey to be in with a chance of winning a £100 voucher for a Glasgow local business of your choice. Our survey is available at www.glasgowdoorsopendays.org.uk/survey. Thanks to our supporters, the Arlington Bass Club, Glasgow City Council and the many more, which you can find out about on the partners page of our website. We hope you enjoy this event. Hello and welcome to Glasgow Doors Open Days Festival. My name is Stephen Sheriff. I'm the festival coordinator. You'll know that we'll be very excited to get back into buildings at the weekend, and I'd like to encourage you to come along. Lots of our things are sold out. However, there is an extensive programme of buildings which you can get into without a booking, so please check those out on the website. As well as that, there's still a few more digital webinars to check out over the next few days. And we also have our own digital radio stations on our website, broadcasting for the duration of the festival for the first time. So I'd like to encourage you to check that out now as well. I will now move on to the main event. So I'm just going to introduce Thierry Lai of the New Glasgow Society. Thank you so much.
We start? Hi everyone. Thank you, Stephen, for the introduction. And also thank you everybody for joining the webinar this evening. My name is Thierry, the Vice Chair of the New Glasgow Society. We came across this Green New Deal Glasgow project back in January this year. And we thought this is something worth sharing with the city before COP26 takes place in November. Before we start, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce New Glasgow Society. For those who haven't heard of us before, the New Glasgow Society is a civic group started in the 1960s, and we have been promoting and stimulating the public interest about architecture and the built environment in Glasgow. You can find out more on our website or social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and everything. For the webinar this evening, we have two speakers joining us from London. The first speaker is Alfredo Ramirez, who is Director of the Architectural Association Ground Lab, alongside Clara San Juan. The AA Ground Lab is a research design initiative that aims to investigate ways in which a radical transformation of the design profession can take place in addressing climate change. The group visualizes and politicizes invisible global networks and the spatial impact of policy making, alongside the design of ground techniques that imagine alternatives to standard design practices. The second speaker with us tonight is Julian Sarabo. Julian Sarabo is an architect and urban designer working in policy. He has spent time in research and commercial architectural practices, eventually gravitating to the think tank world. He has worked for Commonwealth and led Autonomy UK's urban research branch. Julian currently teaches history and theory of architecture at UCL, and along with Stephen Sherman at the RCA's City Design Programme. Unfortunately, Miriam Brett, who is Director of the Research and Advocacy of the Commonwealth think tank, is unable to join us tonight. So a bit of background to the new Green New Deal Glasgow project. In 2020, the Commonwealth have collaborated with the Architecture Association Ground Lab to visualise how a Green New Deal-led recovery could transform Glasgow. The project does not seek to provide a comprehensive policy roadmap. Rather, it seeks to stimulate discussion and generate policy ideas through providing images around what transformative change could look like in practice. The webinar will start with a 12-minute long video that Alfredo and his team has kindly pulled together for tonight. So, Julian, Alfredo, do you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here.
Yes, thank you, Thierry, Steven, and everybody in the festival for allowing us to share this project with you all. So, as Thierry is saying, no? Shall we start sharing So yeah, I'm gonna just share the video. There's a couple of outcomes that are part of this project. One is an interactive website that Commonwealth put together, and perhaps we can go through afterwards. And the second one is a video that we are kind of, we have the premiere today, and that will be showing afterwards in the New Glasgow Society in the gallery for anyone who wants to have a look closer. So let's start sharing, and then we'll see you in 12 minutes and a half.
I'm going to unmute myself. Unmute myself, actually.
Okay, here we go.
The pandemic has fundamentally reshaped our communities, towns, and cities, changing the way we live, work, and play. As part of our recovery, we need to reimagine everything from housing to green spaces and infrastructures, tackling both the inequality crisis and the climate and environmental crises. The World Health Organization estimates that air pollution kills more than 7 million people each year. While global regions battle with ferocious storms, long periods of drought, rising sea levels, crop failures, and devastating floods. The causes and distributional impacts of this climate crisis are unevenly felt both between and within countries. To face the climate emergency, recovery must go further, rebuilding stronger communities and more pleasant environments. The city must be at the heart of the green transition to showcase how we can bring about a thriving low-carbon life to create transformative spaces that put people and climate first. A Green New Deal can deliver change on the pace and scale required, restructuring our economy towards sustainability, hardwiring justice into economic and social life, and repairing plundered natural systems. This project sets out to envisage how a Green New Deal-led recovery could transform the city of Glasgow, with the aim to stimulate discussion and generate policy ideas through providing images around what transformative change could look like in practice. Preparing Glasgow for the risks associated with climate breakdown will require bold action. Our current situation shows fragmented landscapes with insufficient networks of blue-green infrastructure. Restoring the banks of the Clyde and its streams is key to managing flooding, as is connecting these to areas of vegetation capable of absorbing excess water in their root systems. These actions can go hand in hand with wider efforts, such as the establishment of a green belt for Glasgow and drawing on local resources by bolstering the wind farm capacity of the city and connecting it to other sources of green energy. Also reinforcing, transforming, and restoring natural systems with urban rewilding programs that benefit the health and resilience of the city and its residents, generating cleaner area and better space for leisure and activity. Finally, a tight-knit infiltration of green and blue networks is a fine-grained strategy of greening secondary urban spaces to further reinforce a fabric of biodiverse vegetation and wild species right at the heart of the city. By using nature-based resilience strategies, such as afforestation programs and targeted hydrological interventions, Glasgow could help mend its relationship with its surrounded landscape. By restoring the banks of the Clyde and its streams, we can better manage flooding. And by relying on local and sustainable sources of energy, the Clyde can provide water and geothermal energy for residential reuse and local green jobs. The current street section highlights the existing streetscapes and the need to shift away from spaces built around cars to lower emissions and air pollution levels. Moving towards a sustainable and healthy future will require changing the built environment and transport infrastructure to encourage walking and cycling, and making sure residents can easily access affordable and sustainable services in their area. Part of this should entail creating a continuous, accessible streetscape with wider pavements and a clear horizon, making walking and cycling the obvious choice to get around the neighborhood. A public realm built and adapted around cars has made walking a less than ideal option. Caught between the speed of traffic and crowded pavements, spending time outside can be stressful or feel unsafe, particularly for vulnerable individuals. Walkability is not achieved with street design alone. Shops and services, their availability and cost, are key factors in shaping the ability to get out and spend time in the neighborhood. Cars in Glasgow stay put for the majority of their lives, while roads, car parks, and on-street parking take up a third of Glasgow's public ground, feeding an increasingly serious heat island effect, one the sparse vegetation in Glasgow does little to mitigate. Accessible streetscape makes walking the obvious choice to get around the neighborhood. The wider pavements and clear horizon make spending time outside more pleasant and safe. Green buffer zones have replaced some parking spaces, protecting pedestrians from traffic. An ambitious new era of community wealth building can ensure the high street a mix of affordable shops and local community services, to create an active and inclusive street life anchored in local culture and initiatives. With most on-street parking removed, a green buffer zone could come in to protect cycle paths and pedestrians. Corridors of trees can make the air cleaner and double up with the city's sustainable drainage system, absorbing CO2 while protecting homes from the noise and pollution of traffic. Glasgow's iconic tenement buildings are a central pillar of the city's landscape. With this in mind, and inspired by Averill Payton's Windows in the West, and the work by John Gilbert Architects, the section describes the potential of retrofitting tenements and their common areas to enable greater levels of community participation and shape how living spaces are designed and used. An expensive and fragmented heat delivery strategy, combined with the poor thermal performance of old tenements, has contributed to the current lack of affordable heating. This crisis needs immediate action that should focus on making tenements carbon neutral. Future-proofing tenements means addressing the combined challenge of climate change and an aging population to make it easier for aging adults to keep enjoying the benefits of urban community life. A cooperative stewardship of tenements can not only help bring down soaring rental prices, but also improve the shared and characteristic hallways of Glasgow tenements. Preserving this common heritage, along with cooperative management of heat and waste, can become a key source of employment that is both sustainable and rooted in the communities they serve. New models of ownership can transform collective space in and around tenements to enhance active and diverse common areas. Under collective management, gardening would provide both a form of community employment and communal activity. As the pandemic subsides, along with the need for social distancing, indoor spaces in the courtyards could house a network of lively community infrastructures, with all the necessary equipment to host regular meals, meetings, and gatherings. A retrofitting revolution to create net zero decent homes for all is an opportunity to create good local jobs in rooted supply chains, tackle fuel poverty, and create shared spaces for communities to use. Reimagining the ownership structures in and around tenements, from heating systems to building management, can allow for greater levels of participation from communities, involving them in shaping decisions about their living space and environment.
Okay, that was it. That's the video we prepared for the project. We thought it would be a good idea to share all the details of this. And what we're gonna do now with Thierry and Julian, we're gonna go through the process, no, in the way in which we basically create these images. Perhaps a little bit the origin of the project in Commonwealth, why Commonwealth is interested in Green New Deal, what are the policies that perhaps they are interested, and how we came to choose Glasgow as an example of how to concretize some of these policies. So I don't know, Thierry, if you want, we can start from that bit. And Julian can perhaps give us a little bit of background on Commonwealth and the interest on Green New Deal, even though, well, Julian right now it's not in Commonwealth, but he was a pillar of this project, and he can explain in general, no, like
yes, no, absolutely. I was around for long enough to have really sort of taken to heart a lot of the work that has been done there at Commonwealth, which, for the people who don't know, is a think tank, which I guess in the broadest sense thinks about new models of ownership. Really from anything that goes to housing to sort of international finance. And I was brought in to sort of lead some of the urban and spatial thinking that they were interested in doing at the time, and which they're still continuing with, in fact. And the project, the sort of overall stream of projects was called 4 Visions for a Green New Deal. And Glasgow had been chosen as the only urban context in which we sort of large urban context in which we really wanted to speculate and think about what a Green New Deal would mean. And that's when we got in touch with Alfredo and Clara and their wonderful team of students at the AA.
Yep, and that's how we came to start this collaboration. No, Julian and myself, we are both architects, and I think there is a common interest in how to communicate these ideas, no, and how to visualize. No, there's a number of skills that architects could provide to the society, and perhaps one of them is visualization. No, so
Yeah.
so that's the point at which this both the interest confluence, no, in this project. So the selection of Glasgow was the starting point of this, and we then came to select a number of different landscapes of the city, and specifically 3 of them at 3 different scales. No, so we have the view of Glasgow and how you can imagine a potential transformation of Glasgow if some of these policies, such as rewilding urban environments, or relying on sources of energy that are not fossil fuels, could impact, in the way the structure of the city. And then the scale of the street, there was an obvious choice in selecting areas that are more characteristic of Glasgow, with the tenements and social housing, many of them being neglected or in a poor state. But obviously it represents, at least that's what we learned, part of a fundamental part of the landscape of Glasgow, and the surrounding areas, how they can actually be part of that. That was the second choice. And the third one is, the actual section of the tenement, and we wanted to bring to life those 3 aspects and connect them all. There was, thanks to Miriam, we came to know Avril Payton's Windows to the West, that perhaps we have a few people from Glasgow that will recognize that painting, and that was obviously a source of inspiration, to try and see how we can bring to the camp of visualization, that idea of looking through the interior spaces, of the people in Glasgow. We basically go further than April, obviously, like we basically get into the tenements, but that was, I think a good choice. And in order to do this, it was necessary to then get in touch with a number of people, with a number of stakeholders, because obviously we provide, I guess what one might say, professional services, and we are interested in certain aspects, but we have no knowledge of the city.
Who had you got in touch with in terms of like the stakeholders and in Glasgow?
So this was really thanks to Miriam, who we've mentioned now a few times. I'm really sad that she's not here with us. But she lived for many years there and has knows people all operating at many different scales, both in local government, in the world of urban policy, but also working on the ground in communities. So we were lucky enough to get in touch with Canning Park complex, and the people working there, but also Councillor Rhiannon Spear from the Glasgow Council, and
probably a few more. Like
I'm having a few more.
Like,
but yes, we did really manage to speak to a really wide range of expertise. We were really lucky for that also because we were all stuck in our homes. So we got a feeling for what the most pressing issues were at those different scales.
Yes, and we also, there was some architects that were kind of key and fundamental for us. I see one of them, Malcolm Fraser, in the audience.
Indeed.
Oh, yeah.
It's great to that he managed to join us today, at least from the audience. It was also part of this, let's say, group of people that dedicated some time to give us advice, to kind of comment on the images, also to suggest some of the landscapes, the materiality, etc. Like some of the things that obviously makes this landscape more from Glasgow. And there was also Chris Morgan from Young Gilbert Architects, who they did an extensive work on retrofitting. And we use a lot of the knowledge and expertise, I think it's mentioned in the video, that inspire a lot of the section. So that's how we put together all these kind of images based on the knowledge of people, adjust the images, rework them back again, and you see the result on the video that you just saw.
Because you mentioned Malcolm Fraser. Malcolm, do you want to join the discussion? I don't know if I can. How do I? See if I can. Stephen can add him to the call. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can type into the Q&A, and we can, kind of enhance the discussion with more questions. So you mentioned that you actually done quite a few cities in terms of the Green New Deal.
So we started sort of this was the first of the projects, in fact. But we were sort of pre-COVID. We had been looking to do a project in rural Wales. We had in fact been looking at Port Talbot. And doing a collaboration with Alex Ferry Foundation. So really trying to think at what a Green New Deal can mean in all of these different contexts. Hi, Malcolm.
Hello.
Hi there.
Wonderful to see you.
Good to see you and good to see the outputs.
So I thought it would be nice to, we actually have somebody that involved in the project to talk a bit more from the Glasgow perspective.
Well, I'm an Edinburgh boy, so I'm an outsider too. And it was interesting when Jose and Julian approached me. I'd been going for the Glasgow city architect role. Brian Evans got it on the basis of urbanism, and I was just kind of itching with thoughts and ideas about Glasgow. I think it's really good to see quite a lot of the work going into the importance of valuing our existing built environment and retrofit. We understand that these big challenges we have are not always fantastically glamorous. They're about doing simple things, caring for the fabric of our places. And it was lovely to see how the team engaged with that and took forward Gilbert's important work in terms of repairing, reimagining tenements. Glasgow is an exemplar of going through these cycles of destruction and build it up and destroy and build it up. I'm a great fan of Chris Leslie's evocative photographs of all these towers coming down, etc. And that's what we're all part of the building industry, and that's what the building industry likes. It likes what they talk to politicians, and I'm always listening out for keywords, and deal flow is what they talk about. And deal flow basically means we've got to get rid of these Victorian schools because they are unhealthily sturdy and they don't fall down. Let's replace them with whiz-bang, state-of-the-art new schools that fall apart in 20 years. We'll get to build them again. And let's take all the tenements down. And it used to be tower blocks, and now it's sort of new urbanism with better insulation and things like that. And we just need to get away from that and understand that these things from the past, these neighborhoods, are sustainable if we can walk to the schools, and if we have a library that's not closed down. And it's quite tense to see the possibilities in Glasgow and what's happening and what's not happening alongside it. So when I was being interviewed for City Architect, I got excited about the Clyde and transport, and the work that's been done on the avenues is wonderful. And it's been interesting seeing the website, the tweets about shutting the M8 and things like this. And that I suppose that is radical thinking to go alongside the care and repair of tenements too. It's nice to see you hosting sessions that think about these things. I don't know. Do you know the guy who apparently was a city urbanist?
Yeah, the one who tweeted about the replace the M8.
Yeah. Do you know who that was? It was a sort of an anonymous thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I spoke to him a couple of times, and what we're going to do, well, which is sorry, another topic, which is like we're going to collaborate, and I'm trying to bring that idea into a physical space. That will be the next step. But like for this project in Green New Deal Glasgow, when I saw it, I thought, it deals with a lot more in terms into like policies, and and it goes beyond the architecture realm, which in the daytime, yes, I practice as an architect, but then I want to push a bit more. I think like through like Julian and Alfredo and Malcolm as well. So like, what do you think? Like how as a New Glasgow society, we want to be the bridge between the two. Like kind of bring the idea to the real world, and hence to pick this project as the Glasgow Doors Open Days event.
Yep.
So
it was also nice to hear Kinning Park mentioned. I've done some work for them, and I've contributed to a lot of the thinking behind community asset transfers and community empowerment bill. I think we're all right. We should all have concerns about some of these things that happen, in that it's often the council washing their hands of stuff, and the risks pass to communities. But often people on the ground are better able to make better use of things and do more exciting use in facilities. And it would just be lovely to see more of a network of Kinning Parks and those sorts of people right away across the city. I'm also doing a little project trying to persuade the City Council in Edinburgh to post-COVID, doing what I'm called city playgrounds, which is just designating areas of streets as little mini parks, particularly outside primary schools and outside schools, and extending the playground into them, and make a series of little city squares, a network around Edinburgh to tie into those sorts of things. Because alongside the sort of big moves, as Jose and Julian are saying, we need to think about neighbourhood and the walking. And I would love to, in any Scottish city, you'd love to give somebody the task of working their way across Glasgow, shutting down sections of streets getting more parking elsewhere if it needs to be compensated for, or just losing it, just creating little neighborhood hearts, network all the way across the city, coinciding with underground stops, bus stops, all those sorts of things too. But it's lovely to see this sort of lateral thinking going on, and people understanding that COP should be resulting in positive aspects for Glasgow, building on what's already there, which is why I'm mentioning Kinning Park and people like that too.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think I mean, basically in our case, our role has always been this idea to visualize things that could happen, no, and that they don't, as Malcolm was saying, like perhaps they don't require as much work, and they are there, no, like there's things that we can work with, and you know, having, I mean, developing work like, for example, the video we show or the interactive website that Commonwealth produce, or actually showing this into the gallery is part of, like, say, my ambition as an architect, to try to, if not necessarily, you know, be part of the construction teams, etc., but to allow people, you know, the common of people to know what things can be done. No, so if you know what things can be done with what you have, no, as Malcolm was saying, perhaps there's, you know, you can help build, I don't know, momentum, you know, join people, put pressure, allow, you know, things that could happen easily, no? And if people know what, you know, what can be done, and if we can help provide those means by, you know, materializing those imaginations, let's say, I think that would be something that to me would be very important, and that requires, you know, work with other people that are, you know, doing the work on the ground, building the stuff, but also, you know, aligning all these things together. Perhaps Julian share those ideas or add some stuff to that.
I just, I guess the only thing to add is to really just also going back to Kinning Park and some of the policies that Malcolm mentioned, the importance of thinking about ownership and governance is key, is a key conversation to bring to COP. It's not just engineering and better insulation panels. It is really about rethinking what we hold as a common resource and all the different scales at which that has to happen, and people practicing every day new forms of deciding on shared resources are absolutely key people to speak with in that kind of process.
To pick something else up, I've been lobbying government, be part of, on the edges of the Scottish Land Commission to talk about bigger issues, this whole issue of land use and land ownership, and how government invests. You know, it's just pretty standard in Glasgow that things happen along the Clyde, and that's nice, it's great. But there are huge areas of dereliction, particularly in the northeast of the city. You know, these are really problematic issues, and if government tries to do anything, invests in them, like they should probably be trying to get some large tax offices or the sort of things that they're investing in elsewhere in these places. Then what generally happens is that the value of land roundabout jumps up because of the hope value of the people who own it, and everything stays derelict again. It's really hard in Scotland to get civic investment raising the value all around. So I've been arguing for something called land value capture, LVC, and that allows government or local councils to buy land surrounding investment at existing use values. So if you imagine that there's been a lot of fights over film studios recently and going in the Greenbelt in Edinburgh, etc. If the government directed one of these to some of the big blasted open sites in the northeast of Glasgow. It's actually better situated for accessing the Highlands, which is the main outdoor venue for films in Scotland. And it would regenerate the area around. So instead of owners artificially pumping up the value of the land and it's still staying empty, they could capture the value of that and regenerate it with the rise in land value around. I've not articulated that particularly well, but land value capture is what was used to build the new town in Edinburgh and build the post-war new towns promoted by Winston Churchill. So there are Tories that like it, as well as more left-leaning people. And it's just a great lever for getting public regeneration on vacant land. So I think what Glasgow needs is a combination of big legislative levers like that, a network of Kinning parks and places like that, the general fabric renovation that people like Gilbert's architects are so good at, and that Jose and Julian are promoting here, and avenues infrastructure, covering up the M8 or getting rid of it, all those sorts of big ideas too.
Yeah, even like one of the example which Stephen, the organizer of the Doors Open Days, might know, which is more they managed to kind of use the derelict building in the Barrows, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is the pipe factory, and then turn it into like a gallery space and artist studios. And I think the process, from what I understand, was quite tedious, and I've gone through a lot of paperwork and years of hard work. Similar to like Govan Hill, this kind of all this kind of small, all the kind of buildings around Glasgow that needs the local to support, and that brings it up again to its glory. But yeah. Also, like, I'm kind of curious, like, Julian, you work in a lot of like this kind of think tank, like, how does it actually work in terms of within the city context, like.
So I guess I'm picking up from what Alfredo was mentioning earlier about the importance of sort of bringing visualization and sort of the sort of methods to imagine to the policy world. I think this is something that think tanks have, at least the younger think tanks, have woken up to in the past few years. And I think it's a sort of it's been a two-pronged process in which, on the one hand, in a sort of more simpler way, there is a response to a more visual way of communicating across the board, and that somehow that reality doesn't stop in the politics and policy world. Even when you're speaking to policymakers, politicians, councillors, etc., a visual language, a language that looks like the world that we are immersed in is really important. So that's sort of even before getting into into urban planning and architecture. And then I guess an idea, a concept that I've been using in a lot of conversations has been the idea of storyboarding policy, or like really sort of looking at what it'll look like once it's embedded in the world. What it actually means is that there can be a lot of miscomprehension if you have that role, or if you're working within that sort of area of things, both from a sort of I would say in terms of speaking the same language professionally, and in terms of understanding working processes. But it's certainly a conversation that I'm very, very often shocked at how little conversation there has been, how little architects and architecture schools are willing to engage with legislative ideas. How much of that history is just completely sort of gone over our heads in terms of, why do we live in this kind of flat and not another kind? It seems incredibly important to the history of space, and it's something that's just been completely, at least in my architectural education, completely absent. Alfredo's students are more fortunate in that sense, because that's sort of what they've been doing so well, I have to say. I don't know if Alfredo has any thoughts to add to sort of working within and with policy experts and organizations.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it well, and for me, it's that moment of translation, because the policy work sometimes perhaps is technical, has a specific language that, let's say, the common people may not be able to navigate, no? But a visual language might be also, assure people what is the impact of specific policies, no? And especially in a condition of climate change, like what would be the things that these people are proposing, and how will it change our lives, no? And if you see those things that the case of the tenement, well, you will you will understand these are common landscape. This is the type of landscape that we need just to use as much as we can that infrastructure, improve that infrastructure, provide the means for that to happen, and then the changes wouldn't be or wouldn't sound as scary as as if you would read a policy document, or not scary, but at least not as clear in the common language. So I mean, my experience is perhaps a process of I don't know, like translation, and making sure that people might be able to understand how that could impact your normal life.
Yeah, your environment itself. Yeah, how real it is. No, that's good. I'm just a bit conscious of time. We're like 4 minutes to 8. I'd just like to close this by thanking everybody. Alfredo, who magically put all this thing together, and sharing all the amazing project, and Julian as well, and also Malcolm joining us and sharing all your thoughts. Really thank you for that. And also the Glasgow Doors Open Day, Stephen, you've been organizing all this in the background. Fantastic. So before I kind of close down, I thought, if everybody in the audience who want to read more about the Green New Deal Glasgow project, there'll be a sort of a physical exhibition, which everybody is loving at the moment, because we have been isolating for a while. So we're going to have a physical space with all the posters set up in our West Gallery in Finnieston, Glasgow. The exhibition will open on the Saturday between 12 to 5, and then you'll run for a week for Glasgow Doors Open Days, and also the Climate Fringe Week next week. So yeah, thank you, and give a round of applause. And I hope to see some of you in real life soon.
Yeah. Good.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Thank you.